Hi there, students. A pretty penny. A pretty penny. I wonder why a penny should be pretty. No, a pretty penny is a colourful way of saying that something was expensive. Particularly in this phrase, that must have cost you a pretty penny. That house they live in must have cost them a pretty penny. It's a good way of saying a large amount of money. It's referring to the cost of something. If you want to buy those designer shoes, they're going to cost you a pretty penny. Buying a new car can cost you a pretty penny. Tickets to the concert were incredibly expensive. Yeah, they really were a pretty penny. Renovating the kitchen is going to end up costing me a pretty penny. Yeah, my parents invested a pretty penny in my college education. If you want to go on holiday to the US, it'll cost you a pretty penny. It's fairly expensive there. It's not as cheap as you might imagine. It's perhaps a rather old-fashioned way of saying cost a lot of money. So yeah, this will cost you a pretty penny. It will cost you a large amount. So these import taxes are going to mean that the final product will cost a pretty penny, a considerable sum of money, a large sum of money, a tidy sum they use as well, a bundle as well. So that coat must have cost you a pretty penny. Renovating your house will cost you a pretty penny. I bet that cost you a pretty penny. Notice the way it's always appearing with this cost. Something cost you a pretty penny. This is something that was a lot of money. So a pretty penny. A fine penny was an older variant, a fair penny as well, but they don't use these forms anymore. I think we first saw this in the early 18th century in a play called The Man Bewitched. Why here may be a pretty penny towards if the devil don't cross it. Okay, so a pretty penny. It's saying that something is expensive. It's saying that it wasn't cheap. It's a considerable amount of money. So you're going to have to spend a pretty penny if you want to get this done. Cost an arm and a leg. I think an arm and a leg is probably a more modern one. They will be able to charge a pretty penny for the services they're giving because they've got a captive audience. This is a fancy car like that costs a pretty penny, and I definitely can't afford it. He must have paid a pretty penny for that good-looking house. The bracelet he bought for his wife sure cost him a pretty penny. That watch cost me a pretty penny, and I'm going to take care of it. A considerable amount of money. I paid a pretty penny for that ring. So excessively expensive, exorbitant. This is something that, well, it clearly cost a lot of money. Formality. It's a bit old-fashioned. I think I'm going to give it a 4.5 in formality. Use it anywhere except for something very formal. So, a pretty penny. Bye for now.